Okay, so picture this. It's London in the 1920s.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, there's this jazz music everywhere. And you
Mhm.
see these flapper dresses all over.
Yeah.
And it feels so exciting and free,
Yeah.
after that awful war.
Right after all that upheaval, yeah.
But under all that glitz and glamour, there's this scandal
Oh,
that's going to shock everyone, even, like, the most important people in Britain.
oh, wow. So what kind of scandal are we talking about?
But it all starts with a murder.
Oh, geez.
This rich Egyptian playboy, Ali Fahmy Bey,
Okay.
he's found dead
Ooh.
in his fancy suite at the Savoy Hotel.
Oh, wow. The Savoy.
Yeah, and his wife, this beautiful Parisian woman named Marguerite Alibert,
Okay.
she becomes the main suspect.
Oh, I see. So it sounds like a classic whodunit.
Well, it is kind of, but it's also way more complicated than that.
Ah, okay. How so?
Well, Marguerite's story is full of twists and turns,
Huh.
like something out of a thriller novel.
Interesting.
And it all happens against the backdrop of this society that's totally changing.
That's fascinating. Yeah, the 1920s were such a pivotal time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today we're diving deep into Marguerite Alibert's world.
Okay.
We're going to be using the Noble Blood podcast as our guide.
Ah, cool. I've heard of that one.
Yeah, it's great. So, get ready for some seriously shocking stuff,
Sounds good.
because this deep dive is full of it.
All right, let's do it.
So first, let's talk about who Marguerite Alibert actually was.
Okay.
We need to go back to her early life in Paris.
Right.
It was a world away from all the luxury she'd have later on.
Oh, yeah. I bet it was a total contrast.
Oh, absolutely. Think like cobblestone streets,
Yeah.
busy markets, people struggling to get by.
Right.
And then there's Marguerite, this young girl
Yeah.
with so much ambition, watching all these rich people and wanting more for herself.
Makes sense.
But her childhood was really tough.
Oh, how so?
Well, she lost her younger brother in an accident.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah. And after that, they sent her to live with these strict nuns.
Oh, wow. That must have been hard.
Yeah, it was
I can see how that would make someone want to escape.
totally. It's like all these early hardships made her even more determined to create a better life.
Right, like a classic rags to riches story.
Exactly. But with a dark twist.
Oh.
So eventually, she did change her life.
Oh.
She became a high-class courtesan in Paris.
Oh, wow. So she was moving among the wealthy and elite.
But to really understand her story, we need to talk about what being a courtesan actually meant back then.
Okay. Yeah, it's not just about companionship, right?
Right. It's way more complex than that.
Mm-hmm.
These women were like intelligent and graceful and savvy.
Ah, so they were like powerful figures in their own way.
Exactly. They had a lot of influence behind the scenes.
Huh. Interesting.
And it was in this world that Marguerite met the Prince of Wales.
Oh, wow. So the future King Edward VIII.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did that happen?
Well, during World War I,
Right.
the prince was young,
Yeah,
eager to explore, the nightlife in Paris,
of course.
and he was totally drawn to Marguerite's beauty and charm.
Mm-hmm. So they started an affair.
Right, and it wasn't just a fling.
Really?
The prince was totally smitten.
Wow.
He wrote her all these love letters,
Mm.
full of, like, intimate details about his life.
Okay.
Even some pretty sensitive stuff.
Oh, like what?
Well, the Noble Blood podcast mentions some war secrets,
No kidding.
gossip about the royal family, even criticisms of his own father, the king.
Oh, wow. So risky.
Yeah, imagine if those letters had gotten out.
Yikes. It would have been a huge scandal.
Exactly, and it's just so strange to think
What?
that while Europe was at war with millions suffering, this future king was off having fun in Paris.
Yeah, that's a pretty stark contrast.
Right, and it makes you wonder about his priorities.
Definitely makes you question his judgment.
Just has a,
So did those letters ever come back to haunt him?
well, they definitely cast a shadow, but for the moment he was just relieved when Marguerite moved on.
Oh, so what happened?
She married a wealthy businessman,
Mm.
and it seemed like that dangerous chapter was closed.
Okay, but it sounds like there's more to the story.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more to come.
All right, I'm hooked. Let's keep going.
So Marguerite is married to this businessman, right?
Yeah.
It's like a break from all the drama with the prince,
Right.
but it doesn't last very long.
Things never stay quiet for too long in these kinds of stories, do they?
Nope.
So what happens next?
Well, Marguerite seems to attract powerful men.
I guess some people just have that magnetism.
Yeah, and her next conquest takes her right back into that world of danger and intrigue.
Oh boy, who is it this time?
His name is Ali Fahmy Bey, a young, rich Egyptian playboy.
Okay, so a total change of pace from the prince.
Yeah,
Huh, so what happens with them?
they have this whirlwind romance and then a huge fancy wedding.
Wow, sounds lavish.
It was.
So what goes wrong?
Well, they come from completely different worlds.
Yeah, I can imagine that causing some tension.
Oh, totally. Especially back then.
Right, societal expectations were so different then.
Exactly. And Marguerite, she's used to being independent and free.
Mm-hmm.
But Family Bay, he's more traditional.
Ah, so their personalities clash.
Big time.
Yikes.
It all just falls apart.
Oh,
Constant arguments, resentment building up.
Oh no, that's never good.
And it all explodes one night at the Savoy Hotel.
Oh wow, back at the Savoy.
Yeah, they go to see a performance of The Merry Widow.
Huh. It's kind of ironic, isn't it?
Totally right.
Yeah.
They go back to their suite and have this huge fight.
Oh wow.
The hotel porter even overhears them.
Oh jeez.
Then bang, 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 3 gunshots.
Oh my god.
That's it. The end of their glamorous life.
So what happens when the police get there?
They find Family Bay dead.
Oh gosh.
And Marguerite standing over him with a smoking gun.
Whoa, so she's caught red-handed.
Pretty much.
Oh, man. So what happens next?
Oh, the news spreads like wildfire.
Of course, a murder at the Savoy.
Everyone's talking about it.
Yeah, I bet.
But the people who are really freaking out are the prince's inner circle.
Oh, right. They must be worried about those letters.
Exactly. They know this could ruin the monarchy.
Yeah, for sure.
So they go into full damage control mode.
Okay, so how do they handle it?
First, they send the prince to Canada, like right away.
Wow, get him out of there.
Yep. They need to distance him from the scandal.
Makes sense. Protect his reputation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Marguerite is now a widow and accused murderer.
Right, she's facing trial.
Yep, and it's a big one.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But we got to remember the context here.
Okay, what do you mean?
This is England in the 1920s.
Right.
The Russian Revolution just happened.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's on edge about social unrest.
Oh, they don't need another scandal rocking the boat.
Exactly. The monarchy is already vulnerable.
So this trial could be really damaging.
For sure.
Hmm.
So with all that at stake, how does Marguerite defend herself?
Well, she gets the best lawyer she can find.
Who's that?
Edward Marshall Hall.
Oh, I've heard of him.
Yeah, he's known as the Great Defender.
Right. Like he could win any case.
That's the reputation he has.
Wow. So what's his strategy for Marguerite?
Well, he's really good at manipulating public opinion. He knows how to use people's prejudices to his advantage.
That sounds a little shady.
Well, it was a different time back then.
Yeah, I guess so.
Racial and cultural biases were everywhere.
Right, unfortunately.
So instead of focusing on the facts of the case, he plays on the jury's existing beliefs.
Oh, wow. So he's not even trying to prove her innocence.
Not directly, he's crafting a narrative that will make them want to believe her.
Interesting.
So he paints this picture of Ali Fahmy Bey as this savage foreigner, a threat to Marguerite's innocence.
Oh, wow. So he's using racist stereotypes.
Yeah, unfortunately that was a common tactic back then.
It's awful.
It is, but it worked.
So the jury believes him.
They eat it up, they see Fahmy Bey as this dangerous other, and Marguerite as the helpless victim.
It's disturbing that such blatant racism could be used in court.
Yeah, it's a dark side of history for sure.
So what else does Marshall Hall do?
Well, he's got to make Marguerite look good too, right?
Yeah.
So he completely hides her past as a courtesan.
Oh, wow. So he's rewriting her history.
Pretty much, he presents her as this virtuous woman trapped in a bad marriage.
Because a jury wouldn't be sympathetic to a fallen woman.
Exactly.
So he basically invents a whole new Marguerite.
Yeah, he's a master storyteller.
And it works.
Oh, yeah. The jury is completely swayed by his narrative and their own biases.
So what happens?
They deliberate for less than an hour.
Seriously.
Yep, and they acquit Marguerite.
Wow. So she's free.
Free as a bird.
But is she actually innocent?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, because the verdict was so fast, and some details seem to have vanished.
Yeah, like what?
Well, it makes you wonder if there was more going on behind the scenes.
Like maybe someone was pulling strings.
Exactly.
You're talking about the conspiracy theories, right?
Yeah, the idea that the royal family interfered to protect themselves.
Right, they couldn't afford another scandal.
Exactly.
So some people believe they made a deal with Marguerite.
Like she gets off if she keeps quiet about the prince.
Exactly.
That's a pretty big accusation.
It is, but there's some evidence that supports it.
Really? Like what?
Well, for one thing, there are police documents missing, key evidence just gone.
Wow.
And then there are pages ripped out of the prince's diary.
The pages that probably mentioned Marguerite.
Most likely someone was trying to erase their connection.
But if this evidence is gone, how do we even know it existed?
Well, author Andrew Rose, he did a ton of research.
Yeah.
He found inconsistencies in the official records, gaps and silences that tell a story.
So he's like a detective piecing together a puzzle.
Exactly.
That's a compelling theory.
It is?
But is it enough to prove a cover-up?
That's a tough one to answer.
It is. It's like we're missing crucial pieces of the puzzle.
and we may never find them.
So Marguerite is free, maybe thanks to the royal family.
Possibly.
But what about the prince? Did he escape the scandal?
Well, he avoided any immediate consequences,
Okay.
but the Alibert affair, it always lingered.
Like a secret that could come at any time.
Exactly. It was a ticking time bomb.
So did it change him at all, this whole experience?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's interesting that he continued to have these controversial relationships.
Right, culminating in his abdication to marry Wallis Simpson.
Exactly. He defied societal norms and risked the monarchy all for love.
Or at least what he thought was love.
Right.
So even a brush with murder and a potential cover-up didn't stop him from following his heart.
It seems like he always did what he wanted, no matter the cost.
It's fascinating how these two scandals, years apart, both tell us something about the prince.
Yeah, they show us different sides of the same complex man.
A man torn between duty and desire.
And a man whose choices had huge consequences for himself and for the whole British Empire.
So we've been through a lot with Marguerite Alibert, huh?
We have, yeah. From her simple life in Paris to the craziness of British society.
And it's clear she was ambitious, driven, wanted a different life.
Absolutely. But her story, it also shows how fragile everything can be.
Right, like even when you build a perfect image, it can all crumble.
Exactly. Secrets and betrayals have a way of doing that.
So we've seen the murder, the trial, maybe even a royal cover-up.
Yeah.
But what about after all that? What happened to Marguerite?
Well, the jury said she was innocent, but that didn't mean people forgot.
Right. Her name was all over the newspapers, forever linked to this scandal.
Yeah, it's like a permanent stain.
So did she just disappear, try to hide from it all?
Not really, Marguerite. She was a fighter.
Huh. So she didn't let this break her.
Nope, she kept going, but things were different, of course.
Yeah, she couldn't just go back to how things were before.
Right, she was still part of certain circles, but with a reputation now.
I see. So, like, she was this fascinating but scandalous figure,
Exactly, a woman of mystery.
and she was still wealthy, right?
Oh yeah, the settlements from her marriages kept her comfortable.
So she was able to create a life for herself despite everything.
She did. She adapted and found her own way.
But I wonder, did she ever feel lonely, regretful?
It's hard to know what she felt inside, but the scandal, it definitely stayed with her.
Right, it's like a shadow that followed her.
Exactly. She had other relationships, but never remarried.
Like she was always searching for something.
Maybe a sense of belonging or a way to redeem herself.
It's sad in a way, you know?
It is. It shows that even with wealth and freedom, the past can still haunt you.
And it makes you think about how society works.
Yeah. One event can change everything, how people see you, how you fit in.
It's all about appearances and whispers, isn't it?
Sadly, yeah.
So looking back at Marguerite's life, it's more than just a murder trial.
Oh, absolutely. It reflects so much about that time.
The anxieties, the changes in society, the power dynamics.
Right, and we see those same themes in Edward VIII's life, too.
Yeah, he was also caught between tradition and what he wanted.
And ultimately chose love over duty.
And both their stories, they remind us that history isn't so simple.
Yeah, it's not just good guys and bad guys.
Right, there's so many shades of gray.
Exactly, and the consequences of choices, they can last for generations.
So this deep dive into Marguerite Alibert's world, using the Noble Blood podcast, it's given us a glimpse into this time of huge change.
Right, a world obsessed with power and privilege.
And it makes you think about human nature, doesn't it?
Absolutely, what drives us, the choices we make, how far we'll go.
And it shows that history is full of these amazing stories.
Yeah, each one revealing a little bit more about who we are.
But even after all this, we're still left with questions about Marguerite.
Right, was she a victim or a manipulator?
Did she get true justice, or did someone else influence the outcome?
These are things each of us has to decide for ourselves.
Weigh the evidence, think about the context.
And maybe in doing that, we learn something about ourselves, too.
So if you're intrigued by Marguerite's story, keep digging.
Yeah, there's so much more to discover about her, Edward VIII, and that whole era.
Learn more, think critically, keep the conversation going.
And if you want more stories like this, well,
You know what to do.
subscribe to our podcast.
We'll be back with another deep dive soon.
Until then, stay curious
Keep asking questions.
and let history be your guide.